crafters, and welcome back. My name is Deepa from DeeZinesByD, and today I have a Scrappy Tales post for you. So today we're going to be focusing on shaped cards, and I want to show you how to make two cards that are different shapes to kind of jazz up your crafting. So let's go ahead and look at the products we're going to use. First of all, we're using the paper pad. So this is a 6x6 inch paper pad, and you can see that it comes with not only patterns but pictures. So we're going to go ahead and use those along with the bliss stamp set and the coordinating dies. So first thing I want to do is cut my card base. So this card is going to be more close to an A2 sized card. So I'm taking an 8.5 by 11 inch size piece of cardstock, white cardstock. I folded it at 4 1/4, just like an A2 size card, and I didn't cut off the top yet. What I want to do is kind of decide where my curve or arch at the top is going to fall. So if you have an arch die, you can just go ahead and use that and kind of have it off the edge a little bit to create a card. But for me, I don't have one, so I'm going to use a circle die. This is from Spellbinders to kind of cut the arch on the top. So I actually measured and cut off a bit on the top, and this ends up being a little bit larger than 5.5. I think it's actually 6 inches by 4 1/4. I've cut the color of cardstock that I want on the top, and I've temporarily adhered it with some temporary glue there, some adhesive. And now I'm going to position my circle and put it through my die cutting machine while doing partial die cutting. So as I'm showing you here, you would place your pad halfway through the circle at the top and put it through your die cutting machine to cut half that circle to create an arch. So you can see I've detached the panel, and you can just rub off the adhesive. I use some Tombow Mono removable adhesive here. Now, my card base wasn't exactly the width of the circle, so I have a little bit of an edge that I'm cutting off the sides here with my scissors, and then I'll also kind of line it up with the panel and cut it off there as well. You could have just attached your panel at this point, but I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do the design, whether I was going to do it on the panel, then attach it, or attach the panel and then just do it straight on the card. So you could just adhere your panel and do all of your cutting at once. Now, for the next card, I'm using these oval dies. These are Spellbinders Fluted Classic ovals. And so this is going to be a bit of a larger card. I'm actually scoring it at 5 inches, as if you were making an A7 size card. And I will fold the paper again. This is 8.5 by 11, so it's a full-size piece of white cardstock. And then I'm going to cut the extra piece off. So now I kind of held my oval on the white cardstock and cut off any extra piece on the top. I've attached a blue piece of cardstock, which is going to be my panel for the front of the card, and now I've got my oval kind of overhanging the left edge. And you have to do that, otherwise it's just going to cut an oval. You want to allow there to be a fold for this to become an actual card. So this one I can put fully through my die cutting machine. There's no partial die cutting involved. And I do kind of keep the front removable, because sometimes I remove the front and then just put the card through, because I'm cutting through 3 layers of cardstock and sometimes that's required. Now let's move on to our stamping. I'm grabbing that Tropical Bliss stamp set, and I've got all of my different colors of cardstock to suit my color scheme for this card. And I find the trick to doing this is line up all of your stamps in a line or in a certain configuration and keep it the same, and make sure that it's a size that can go through your die cutting machine. Or if you're using a smaller die cutting machine on your table like I'm going to be, make sure it's smaller so that it's going to fit through that. So mine is actually like a longer panel that's about 2 inches in width, and I'm just going to cut some more panels that are about that same size, about 2 inches in width, so that I have many panels that I can just stamp on and then cut everything out all at once. So I'll show you how I do that. So now I can just stick my panels into my MISTI and just mass produce these die cut pieces. So I'll just keep stamping for each panel, and then I'll switch to the different colors and stamp each of those different colors. So I'm creating maybe like 2 to 3 panels for each color. I ended up having more than I needed, but I always like to have more than less. And I'm using it for 2 cards. That's why there's so many. So you can see how easy this becomes with the MISTI. So it's very important you keep those stamps in the same position. Don't move them or pick them up. And this is why So everything's stamped out here, and now I've got my dies. And what I'm going to do is make a makeshift die template. So what that means is I'm going to use one of these stamped out pieces, and I'm going to line up all of my dies and attach them together with washi tape. So now I've created a larger die that's going to cut out many little dies all together. Not one die, but one piece, right? So now I have everything lined up. I've attached my washi and I can take that off. And you can see it lines up perfectly here. I can take another one, lines up perfectly there. So all I have to do is place it on one piece, cut it all out, take it off in one piece, take it and place it on the other cardstock piece, cut all those pieces off. And this makes cutting out multiple dies much easier, especially for mass production cards, or say you weren't making 2 cards, you're making more. This makes it so much easier to do. And I do have to mention the key to doing this is to make sure initially when you put your stamps in your MISTI, first of all, you need a stamp positioner like a MISTI. And once you put them all in, do not move them. Stamp all of your pieces in the same way. Don't move those stamps. And then you can create this die template, which makes cutting multiple pieces or multiple die cut pieces much easier and much faster to do. Now, I like using the Sidekick, the Sizzix Sidekick, to do this because it doesn't apply as much intense pressure as my Big Shot Plus does. And because of that, my washi tape kind of stays intact. I find if I put it through my large Big Shot machine, the washi tape tends to kind of start breaking and ripping apart a bit. So if that does happen to you with your machine, depending on whether you have a Sidekick or not, just add another piece of washi tape before the original piece breaks. And then in the end, you just kind of have to take it all apart. Now, I not only have plain cardstock to stamp and die cut from, I have some gold glitter cardstock to add a bit of pizzazz to these designs. So I'm just using some of the dies that kind of keep the shape of what they are, the leaf that they are. And I've cut those out of the gold glitter cardstock and kept them aside to put them all together. Now, we'll move on to the paper pad. So this is the Scrappy Tales Tropical Bliss 6x6 paper pad, and you can see that there are a lot of different designs on here. So you basically get a pattern on all of these papers, and not only that, but you get this paper here, which I think is really cool for a paper pad because you could actually kind of cut this out and create a card just from the front here. Or you could cut the birds out and use it, which is what I'm going to do today. So if you do not have, say, in your budget to kind of buy the dies, the stamps, the so on and so forth, I would say if you just bought one of the paper packs, there's also a 12 by 12 inch available. You can make tons of cards, and you also get some of the bird and flower images on there that you could use as focal points. And remember, you get more than one of each design. So if you decide to use one side of the paper to cut out the birds, that's fine. You always have another piece for using the other side for other cards. So I've cut out those 2 birds with some fussy cutting. And now I'm going to go ahead and try to put all of these cards together. So now I'll just attach my panel to the front of the card, and I think you would have been okay doing this from the get-go, but as I mentioned, when I was die cutting all 3 layers of the card to get the shaped card, I would die cut and I'd get the first 2 layers to cut, then I'd remove the colored card panel, and then I'd fully cut through a second time so it cut through all 3 layers completely. And that's partly why I had it removable, but I'm pretty sure if you still kept it on there, it would have been okay. I just didn't want to have the die kind of move or budge and then ruin the front panel. So now that I've attached the panels with permanent adhesive, I'm going to turn to my sentiments. So I'm using the same stamp set again, and I'm just using some VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink to stamp these out with acrylic blocks. Now you can see that the VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink, I only really have to press this once and it stamps out perfectly, and I'm not even using a MISTI, right? I think that's why I really like those inks because it actually, I think it stamps way better than the VersaFine Onyx, but don't quote me on that. Everyone has their preference. So now I'm just going to grab all of these leafy pieces and make sure that I'm using a mix of the different colors from the color scheme I'm using to kind of put them all together. And I'm not putting them together all flat on the card. I want it to have a bit of dimension to it. So some of the pieces I'm placing on with some foam squares, some pieces I'm gluing with some Barely Arts glue and attaching it flat onto the card. And I find that by doing this, you just add an extra element of dimension, an extra element of interest to the card. So I'll also prop up this cockatiel with some foam squares so that it kind of stands out. And you'll notice that even in the light, it creates a little bit of a shadow, and that also makes it stand out a little more, especially since it's the focal point of this card. Now, for the leaves and all of those extra little foliage pieces, the leaf that is normally on the top is the one that I will prop up, and then I'll kind of tuck the other ones behind, and maybe I'll have another one or two sticking up with a smaller piece of foam square, which is not as thick, so that I have multiple levels of dimension. But keep in mind, to do that, you have to have foam squares or foam adhesives that are different thicknesses. So anyways, let's go ahead and attach the sentiment here. Again, I'm attaching this with some foam strips, and once I've got it lined up exactly where I want it, it's good and ready to go. So once I placed everything down on this card, I kind of felt like something was missing. So I grabbed my Pigma Micron pens. I have a whole bunch of them in different sizes, but I'm going to use one of the smaller sizes. And I'm just going to create a bit of a frame around the card. Now, you're probably wondering, you have an arch. It's going to be hard to kind of trace a frame around there. Well, I'm going to show you how I like to do it. So I'm adding lines or a frame around all of the straight edges. Okay, and once that's done, I'm going to grab the die I used to cut the arch. And I'm going to have to do this in two pieces. So I'll kind of line it up closer to the bottom and get the right distance between the edge and the line and draw the line. And then I'll move it and do the same on the top to get the actual curve of the arch. Because remember, if you were to do that, without moving it, you're not going to get the right distance between your line and the edge of the card, because this is the same size as the first circle we used to make the arch. You would need a smaller one to make it, the right distance. So you do have to do that moving it over thing to make sure that it gives you the right distance between your line and the edge. So I'm essentially putting this oval shaped card together in the same way as I did that arched card at the beginning. I'm adding all of my foliage to the bottom left and the top right. I'm adding the parrot and the sentiment with some foam tape to make sure that it has some dimension and kind of sticks out as the focal point of the card. Now for the frame for this card, I'm not going to use the Pigma Micron pens. Instead, I'm going to do something a little different. So I've got these strips of jewels that I'm going to use to kind of create the frame. Now, I didn't mention it, but I am using those extra little foliage pieces to add a little bit of a design on the inside of the card. And when I have extra pieces or die cuts, I like to do this because it just kind of coordinates your front and your inside. So I've got these strips of jewels, and I'm basically just laying them around the edge of that oval wherever they can be seen in between the foliage pieces to kind of create a continuous frame. Now, if I thought this card out a little better, I probably would have put this down first and then put down all the foliage pieces. But then again, you are going to have some jewels that you're not going to see that are going to kind of get wasted. So if you want to conserve, this is probably the way that you want to go. But these little jewels I actually got from the dollar store. I'm in Canada, so you can probably find these at the Dollar Tree if you're in the US, and they're just inexpensive. And these I bought maybe 5 years ago, and they're still there, so they've been lasting me a long time. And as always, I like to finish my cards off with some clear gems, and I've added a few on both cards. And those are my shaped cards for today. We've got a nice oval and an arch card. I hope you've been inspired. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and go ahead and check out the links in my description below. I've got a link to my blog, which links to all the products, or you could go straight to the Scrappy Tales store and take a look at what's there. There is a new release that was released last Friday. I'm going to be showing you some of those soon. But for now, go ahead and browse the site. You can see what is there that you can get. So I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.